Hello everyone. Welcome to the Happy Life podcast. In today's episode, I will share with you a small experience, but one that plays a very important role in my life. This experience also answers a question that many of you have been asking me for quite some time: how to overcome procrastination. We will explore what procrastination is, why it is dangerous for our lives, and further, we will look into how we can overcome procrastination in our lives. Surely, there have been times when we encounter phrases like, "Today, I don't feel like doing anything, I don't feel like doing homework," or "I don't feel like working on a report for the company." In general, we know there is something we need to do, but we keep waiting for the right mood to start. This is especially true for difficult and complex tasks for which we haven't yet figured out solutions or don't know how to tackle them. The harder the task, the more we tend to avoid thinking about it, and the less inclined we are to start it. Consequently, as long as we have time, we allow ourselves to delay. For instance, if a task needs to be completed by the end of the week and it's only the beginning of the week, we allow ourselves to procrastinate until midweek. Then, as midweek approaches, we delay further until Friday or Saturday. This cycle continues, with the task hanging over us until we finally realize we can't delay any longer, and only then do we reluctantly sit down to work. Even then, we might get distracted, thinking, "I'll just check Facebook for a bit," or "I'll read this article first," and this behavior is accompanied by a feeling of guilt. We know these are tasks we need to do, but we keep putting them off to browse YouTube or Facebook. Alongside this guilt, the thought of starting the task brings no excitement or motivation. This is a common example. Another example is knowing that mastering another language would greatly benefit our careers and lives. We understand that to excel in anything, we need to sit down, study, and practice. We are well aware of what needs to be done to succeed, but the issue is finding the motivation to begin. Thus, the days, months, and years pass by, and sometimes it affects our entire lives. This means that sometimes, we never achieve the success we know we could have, simply because we didn't take the necessary steps. There is a very insightful saying, though I can't remember the exact wording, but the gist is, each of us can achieve success, and most of us know what we need to do to become successful. The only difference between the successful and the unsuccessful is that one group can sit down and start working, while the other looks at what needs to be done and procrastinates. So, does this mean that successful people have some special superpower that makes them constantly inspired to work? To answer this question, I must first say that I don't consider myself to have any extraordinary success, but at least I have achieved some certain results, and from that, I can confirm to you all that I am no different from everyone else. I also enjoy resting and relaxing. I don't have any superhuman abilities that make me want to work from morning till night. So, why can I still work tirelessly? What is my secret to overcoming feelings of fatigue when faced with difficult and complex tasks? All of this stems from a very simple realization that took me quite a long time to discover. It originates from a fundamental misunderstanding that many of us have, which is the saying I mentioned at the beginning of today's talk. We grow up hearing the phrase, "I don't feel like doing something," so often that it gradually forms an implicit conclusion: you need to be in the mood to do something. As a result, we don't do anything unless we feel inspired, and this is a very harmful misconception that many people fail to recognize. In reality, enthusiasm and motivation come after we start doing something, not before, as we often think. Therefore, if we sit around waiting for motivation to appear before starting a task, we will never accomplish anything. This is an extremely important truth that many people misunderstand. Even I used to think this way when I was younger, and looking back now, I just wish someone had told me this sooner. Notice that I use the phrase, "this is a truth," meaning it is the way our bodies operate. Our bodies function this way regardless of whether we want them to or not. Motivation only comes after we begin working on something. Specifically, if we wait for inspiration before starting, we inadvertently get caught in a negative loop. not feeling inspired leads to not doing anything, which in turn leads to further lack of inspiration, and so on. This continues indefinitely, preventing us from accomplishing anything. The truth I mentioned is that our bodies operate in the opposite direction. Now, let's assume that somehow you manage to compel yourself to sit down and work even when you're not feeling inspired. I'm certain that each of us has encountered this feeling before. Notice that in such instances, all it takes is about 10 to 15 minutes of concentrated effort, and naturally, we start to become absorbed in the task. When we begin to focus and ponder, problems gradually start to reveal potential solutions, or even if they don't, they lead us towards alternative approaches. This process links one thing to another, steadily increasing our interest, and eventually helping us solve one issue after another until we've completed the entire task. Reflecting on the overall scenario, it becomes clear that simply initiating the task draws us into a cycle. I term this a positive feedback loop, where the more we engage, the more enthusiastic we become, and the more enthusiasm we have, the more it propels us forward. This cycle perpetuates momentum and enthusiasm for us. The pivotal point to break away from the negative cycle and transition into this positive loop is the initial 5 to 10 minutes. During this period, our bodies resist because we lack initial interest in beginning. However, if we somehow push ourselves to sit down and work through this initial phase, everything subsequently becomes smoother. We begin to get absorbed, feeling eager to continue the work. In fact, once engaged, it becomes challenging to halt the momentum. Many times, while engrossed in a task, if interrupted for a meal or another activity, we may find it quite discomforting. At such moments, we simply wish to complete what we're doing, continuing in that positive loop. Therefore, the true challenge lies not in the task's difficulty itself but in initiating it. And simply put, by somehow forcing ourselves to sit down and start. The next important question then is, how do we manage to push through those initial 5 to 10 minutes? The answer to this question is also the key. We start by convincing ourselves to sit down with the belief that if we just do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, ideally even 15 minutes or half an hour, then things will become much more enjoyable. Another approach is to deceive ourselves with a simple trick. For example, if the task at hand is very complex, we can select a few of the simplest tasks from the heap of work we need to do and trick ourselves into thinking that we only need to complete these few small tasks and then we can rest. Just sit down and work for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, then take a break. It's mainly about tricking our bodies into sitting at the desk. In most cases, once we've done this for a while, we'll find ourselves pulled into that positive feedback loop, and gradually, it will lead us through until we've finished the job. This is a small trick to deceive our bodies into overcoming that initial resistance. Start with such tricks and gradually get used to them. Eventually, you won't need to rely on these tricks anymore. You'll develop the habit of being able to sit down and work even when you're not feeling inspired, and soon after starting, you'll find yourself getting into the groove. Everything I have just shared with you stems from my own personal journey of development. When I was young, I struggled with procrastination for a long time until I gradually realized that excitement only comes after we sit down and start working. If we wait for inspiration to strike before taking action, it rarely does, sometimes, yes, but far less often than we imagine. Once I grasped this simple truth, I began using tricks like the ones I shared earlier to trick myself, and gradually, I no longer need those techniques today. Now, I understand that simply by starting the work, after a while, it naturally piques my interest, and that's how my entire day progresses seamlessly from one task to another, all of which genuinely interest me. At this point, some of you might wonder, but that's because you're doing things you enjoy. What about me? I sometimes have to tackle tasks I don't particularly like. Does this approach still work? The answer is yes. When we invest enough time to deeply understand anything, regardless of its nature, it inevitably brings a certain level of interest. Speaking from personal experience, there are many tasks I don't relish, yet they must be done. I can confirm that by applying focused attention, they become engaging. This simple insight, though deceptively straightforward, has significantly enriched my life. It's fair to say it's one of the pivotal elements contributing to the achievements I enjoy today. I hope this experience will help you overcome procrastination and thereby find the motivation for the tasks you need to accomplish, ultimately leading you to success and the goals you aspire to achieve. I'll conclude today's session here. If you found this content helpful, please share it with your friends and loved ones. Additionally, as YouTube's algorithm favors videos with more likes, if you enjoyed this video, please click the like button to help our podcast reach more people. Thank you for following along, and I wish you all a peaceful evening.